Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the fifth episode of the summarized version of the Quran we are doing for the holy month of Ramadan 2024. We had reached the uh, middle part of Surah Aal-i-Imraan yesterday, and the last verse I did was it had to do with the unity of Muslims on the basis of the Holy Quran. When we hold fast to this book of Allah, we will be able to have the all important unity amongst Muslims. Else, we'll break into factions and sects. This is what the Quran says. So we move on. And the next verse that I will do is verse 113. Actually, it's 113 to 115, wherein the Almighty is mentioning the fact that these people of the book who have rejected this last message of God, they are doomed if they will continue to follow that policy. The Quran says, "Zuribat alayhimus zillah." They have been put under humiliation by the Almighty. However, the Quran goes on to clarify in verse 113, Laysu sama. They are not all the same. That is, not all Jews, not all Christians belong to the same category. They are not all evil. Min ahlil kitab, from amongst the people of the book, ummatun qaima, there is a group which is standing firm on its commitments. Yatluna ayatillah, they recite the verses of God ana layl, during the periods of night, wahum yasjudun, while prostrating. So they are good, devoted, God-fearing people. Next verse says, yu'minuna billahi wal yawmil akhir. They believe in God and the last day. وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. They enjoin what is good and they forbid what is evil. وَيُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ. And they hasten towards good deeds. They do good deeds and they are very particular about them. فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصَّالِحِينَ. They're all good people. وَمَا يَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ. And whatever good they're going to do, فَلَنْ يُكْفَرُوا. It is not going to be rejected. It's not going to be removed from their record. That is, it's going to be accepted. وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالْمُتَّقِينَ. And God knows who the God-fearing people are. It's a far cry from the popular understanding amongst Muslims that whoever is not a Muslim is doomed. Imagine that the Prophet, may Allah's mercy be on him, was there. The Quran was getting revealed, and the Quran praises lavishly some people who were not as yet Muslims. Most certainly because of their good nature, because of them being truth-seeking. These people later embraced Islam because when a messenger of God is present physically himself and delivering the Almighty's message, then all good people converge towards him. All evil people have no chance of believing in him. That's one theme that runs across the Quran, and you find passages after passages confirming this reality. To be honest, if this is not the truth, then it's all very confusing. Because, I mean, Belief, if it is based on something other than good character, good morality, then, oh goodness me, you can't understand the entire scheme of the Almighty. But thankfully, the Almighty's scheme is very clear. It makes huge sense. Then we move on to verse 121 onwards. The second part of Surah Al-Imran is addressing Muslims, like the second part of Surah Al-Baqarah was addressing Muslims. As I said, the two are forming a pair. They're partners in a pair. While in the case of Surah Al-Baqarah, where it was the injunctions of Sharia, the law of Sharia that was given to Muslims in a certain logical sequence. In the case of Surah Al-Imran, it is one particular incident happening which was in the background of the instructions, the clarifications that the Almighty has given. And that incident was that of the Battle of Uhud. So, what we find is in Surah Al Imran that the Almighty is mentioning the events that took place in the Battle of Uhud, not in the manner way of a story, but the Surah mentions the reasons why what happened actually happened. Who was wrong? Who was right? What were the causes that led to certain things that happened? And certain incidents are reported as well. It's like in the modern times, you study certain disciplines, certain subjects um, through case study method. You have a particular case, it's a real story quite often. And then through the narration of that story in the background, certain concepts are clarified. The application of those concepts are discussed. And it really has a very strong impact. It helps in learning very effectively. So it starts from verse 121, where we have the beginning of the Battle of Uhud, which is mentioned. وَإِذْ غَدَوْتَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ تُبَوِّئُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ مَقَاعِدَ لِلْقِتَالِ. And imagine, remember, when you, O Prophet, left your family in the morning to post the believers at their stations, that is, for the purpose of the battle. Wallahu Samiun Alim, and God was, God is hearing, knowing. The next verse, 122, goes on to mention is Hammat ta'ifatani minkum an tafshala. It was the occasion when two parties amongst you were about to lose their confidence, their courage. Wallahu waliyuhuma, even though God was their supporter. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. And upon Allah, upon God, should the believers put their entire trust. So that's where it starts from. And then the description of the Battle of Uhud and the manner things unfolded is mentioned. It's a very fascinating reading, I mean, and you read it, it has been described in a way that you are learning, you're getting guided, and you are also understanding certain deeper, more complex, subtle issues, subtle matters that happened, took place during the battle. I keep saying that if you want to read a book on Sirah, it is the Quran. And it really is described in such a manner that you keep reading the Quran over and over again, You keep revising those things that happened during the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you know you feel that you are in his company. I mean, it's fascinating. Then we move on to verse 130, and in verse 130, there's something unexpected that you find mentioned. The Quran says, "Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la ta'kulu riba adhafam mudafa." Believers, don't take riba, interest, charging it doubled and redoubled, many times more. Fattaqullah, and fear God, la'allakum tuflihun, so that you are successful. You might well ask that just now claimed that it is in Surah Al-Baqarah that the verdicts of the Sharia have been mentioned. But in Surah Al-Imran, it's the Battle of Badr that has been mentioned. So why is then the surah talking about riba? Why is that so? Well, the answer is that actually it's talking about riba, but not as a Sharia injunction. It's actually telling believers that, look here, what some of you are doing is wrong. It's blatantly wrong. It's absolutely unacceptable. Look what you're doing. You're charging riba interest from people, doubled and redoubled. The real mention of the Sharia condemning, prohibiting riba, we already seen in Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 275 to 281. Here it's a different reason why a certain attitude behavior has been mentioned. You learn from the Quran that if believers are to undertake an important project for the sake of the Almighty, for instance, jihad, war, battle against the enemy for the sake of the Almighty, it could be any other project, then it's absolutely essential that before embarking upon uh, the details of the project in a certain sequence, before entering the actual actions, uh, the believer should cleanse himself from the evils that he or she had done in the past. You find in the Quran, in a number of passages, when the Almighty is talking about jihad, he's talking about first praying to the Almighty, asking for his forgiveness, so that those who are undertaking the project for the sake of the Almighty, they become eligible, worthy of that project. It is exactly the same reason why you find that in the worship of Hajj, when the pilgrims go, uh, they're actually going there at the invitation of the Almighty to undertake jihad. Uh, but after they reach the house of God, they do their circumambulation, tawaf, showing their commitment, uh, confirming their resolve to be loyal to the Almighty by kissing the black stone or signaling towards it, which is symbolically the right hand of God. They show they express their firm commitment. They move on to Mina on the 8th of Zulhajj, like soldiers of the Almighty, encamping in a land, bare land. And then they move on to Arafat the next day, 9th of Zulhajj, praying to the Almighty, asking for forgiveness, doing repentance, asking for his help that should come their way for them to be able to fight the enemy, Shaitan, the next day. And from the next day, 10th Zulhajj, till the 12th or 13th of Zulhajj, it is this jihad, this war, battle against the enemy, Shaitan, which is undertaken. They pelted stones at the Jamarat, which are symbolically representing Shaitan, the evil ways, the evil forces. So, what I'm saying is that quite the same way, here the Almighty is telling believers that, you know, you are to fight the enemy. Before you do that, it's this riba that you're charging double and redoubled. You're doing evil. You must get rid of it, or else you'll not be eligible. You will not perform well. It's not going to be accepted by the Almighty as a genuine act of sacrifice, of contribution to his cause. Then we move on to verse 140. The Almighty is talking about the reason why what happened to the Muslims, why it happened, what's the philosophy, what's the reason behind it. The Quran says, in yamsaskum qarhun faqad massal qawma qarhum mithlu. If injury, wound touched you, O believers, don't be disappointed. Faqad massal qawma qarhum mithlu. There, there was wound, injury, loss that was inflicted upon the enemy as well. Not long ago, in the Battle of Badr, they were at the receiving end. If now you have gone through difficulty and pain, uh, don't be too disappointed. It happens. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. These are the days of varying conditions. We alternate amongst the people. Why? وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So that we test people and God knows, God brings out clearly people who truly believe. وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ. And He causes you to go through these experiences so that He brings out, enables some of you to become shuhada, shaheeds, martyrs. That is, Allah, God wants people to get the opportunity to attain the status of shaheed. The expression shaheed, the plural of which is shuhada, has been used in the Quran only in this particular verse for the meaning of those who get killed in the way of God. Uh, the word shaheed has been used in the Quran quite often, means a witness, and it has been used to mean a witness of God's message. The Prophet has been described as Shahid. This Ummah has been described as Shuhada al-Nas, the companions. They were the witnesses of God's message for the rest of the mankind. So that is what God is mentioning was the reason. وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. And God does not like the wrongdoers, the zalim, the unjust people. وَلِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. And God caused it to happen so that He could purify those who are true believers. وَيَمْحَقَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And so that He could destroy the disbelievers. So, in order to cleanse believers, He had to make them go through these experiences. And further in 142 verse, He says, Am hasibtum, do you think, an tadkhulul jannah, that you will be able to enter the paradise? وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا جَاهَدُوا مِنْكُمْ وَيَعْلَمَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Even though as yet He has not been able to bring out, verify those who truly struggle in His cause, and He has not been able to make evident those who are truly steadfast. who persevere. So you see, it is in the events that take place in this worldly life that your true potential is realized. Who is a good person and who is not a good person? How would you know unless things happen? So it is these happenings, these trials, these tribulations, the good times as well as the bad times that cause people to bring out and demonstrate their true worth. So if it's happening to you, believers, don't be disappointed. It's a part of the Almighty's scheme. He would want to see, he would want to know who you are, what is your real worth. Then we move on to the next verse, 144, wherein the Almighty is talking about one part of the Battle of Uhud. When there was this news, this rumor that spread across that God forbid Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has gotten killed. This news was so disappointing for believers that many of them they lost their hearts and were not inclined to fight anymore. So that that incident in the background, the Quran says, "Wama Muhammadun illa Rasul." Look here, after all, Muhammad is only a messenger. قد خلت من قبله الرسل. There were messengers who have gone by before him. So, أَفَإِن مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ, if he dies or is killed, إِنْ قَلَبْتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ, would you turn back on your heels? Are you going to say goodbye to your faith? Is that what your attitude is? وَمَن يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ, and he who turns back on his heels, فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا, he would not be able to harm God at all. He's going to harm himself. وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهُ الشَّاكِرِينَ, and God, he rewards those who are grateful. If you are truly grateful, if you value God's message, you know what you've gotten. You know its worth. And as a consequence, you are prepared to do whatever it takes to serve its cause. But those who are not grateful, they, at some point, they show their weakness. And it goes on to say, do you not know? وَمَا كَانَ لِنَفْسٍ أَن تَمُوتَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And it is not possible for anyone to die except by the will of God. Kitabam muajjala. It is a decree determined, already known. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ ثَوَابَ الدُّنْيَا نُؤْتِهِ مِنْهَا. Given this reality, now, whoever is after the rewards of this worldly life, we are going to give him that reward. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ ثَوَابَ الْآخِرَةِ, and the one who is after the rewards of the next life, نُؤْتِهِ مِنْهَا, we are going to give him that reward as well. وَسَنَجْزِي الشَّاكِرِينَ, and we reward the grateful. That is, we will give reward of the hereafter to those who are truly grateful. After that, we move on to verse 152, wherein the Almighty is as if describing some of the details of the Battle of Uhud. You see, it's not done in a way that you have the narration of a story. It's done in its own divine way of enabling people to get guided, to get to the crux of the matter and find out what really was happening and why was it happening. What was the grand scheme of the Almighty, and how can we learn lessons from it? So the Quran says, وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ. And when the Battle of Uhud started, God fulfilled his commitment, his promise. Is tahussunahum bi-izni. When you were killing the enemy, to begin with, you were the one who were overpowering, who were causing them to be killed, to be defeated. But then what happened? حَتَّى إِذَا فَشِلْتُمْ وَتَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Until such time, when you lost courage and fell into disputing, they started disputing with each other. وَأَسَيْتُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَرَاكُمْ. And you disobeyed after you saw مَا تُحِبُّونَ, what you loved. That is, when you saw the victory, enemy running away, and you saw the spoils of war, you forgot about the fact that the Prophet had assigned you the responsibility of staying at a certain place uh, until such time that you were asked to move from there. Minkum man yuridu dunya. There were those amongst you who desired the worldly life. Wa minkum man yuridu al-akhirah. And there were those amongst you who desired the life hereafter. Thumma sarafakum anhum. And then you were taken away from them. That is, you did not come face to face to fight, liyabtaliyakum, so that he could try you, he could test you. Walaqad afa ankum, and God forgave you for what you did. Wallahu zu fadlin alal mu'minin. Indeed, God, He is the one who has all the bounties, and He makes it available for the believers. This was 152. And then we move on to verse 155, where the Almighty is talking about something very important. It's another important principle that we derive out of the experience of the Battle of Uhud. The Quran says, "Inna allazina tawallaw minkum yawmal taqal jam'an." Indeed, those of you who turned back on the day when the two armies met face to face. إِنَّمَا اسْتَزَلَّهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ بِبَعْضِ مَا كَسَبُوا. It was Satan, Shaitan, who caused them to slip because of some evil, some blame that they had earned earlier. Which really means that when you are embarking upon something which is important for the sake of the Almighty, like, for instance, the Muslims, they face the enemy for the sake of God. When you are there to do something as important as that, and you carry a blame, you've not you're not repented properly, as I said earlier, uh, then it impacts your performance. You can't do well. It is through God's help that you are able to perform well. If you lose that help, that support, you are vulnerable. You are at the mercy of Shaitan, Satan. So, when it happened to you, or believers, you were given to face the consequences of the wrongs you had done in the past. Obviously, the Quran doesn't talk about what they were, but mentions this very important principle that if you have got the honor of doing something on behalf of the Almighty, then be sure that you have to be clean. You should purify yourself from the wrongs that you've done in the past Because if you carry that blame with you, the evil, the end result is going to be that it's going to impact your performance. You will slip somewhere. You will not be able to do well. It's so very true. I mean, sometimes you feel that you could do well, not quite as well as you should have done. And you realize that, oh, goodness me, all right, sorry, God. I, I realize now. So, it's true in every matter that you do for the sake of the Almighty. If you have done something wrong before and it has not gotten cleansed, it will show. It's His kindness. It says, "Wal- Wallahu," sorry, next verse, 155. It says, وَلَقَدْ أَفَى اللَّهُ عَنْهُ. And God has forgiven you. That is, He wanted you to learn through this experience. Now that you know it, God has forgiven you. Why? Because you realize it. Your realization, and as a consequence, you repenting to Him, is now enabling you to get the all important forgiveness from the Almighty. In Allah, Ghafurun Halim. Indeed, God is forgiving, forbearing. He tolerates us despite our weaknesses, despite the wrongs that we do. And He forgives us as and when we seek His forgiveness properly, genuinely. Then we move on to verse 169, wherein the Almighty is responding to the propaganda of the hypocrites who used to say to the believers to demoralize them, telling them, look here, you are going after somebody who is not guiding you properly. God forbid. That's what these hypocrites were. They became a part of the Muslim group, but deep inside, they never believed. And they would every now and then blame the Prophet ﷺ for anything that they would face in the form of difficulty, challenge. So there was this propaganda. And obviously, imagine that there were a number of Muslims who got killed, 70 in all, which was a big number. And many Muslims were understandably dejected. So the Almighty said, verse 169, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا. And don't ever say about those people who got killed in the way of God, أَمْوَاتًا, that they are dead. بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ. No, they are not dead. They are living. They are alive. عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Before their Lord, يُرْزَقُونَ. They are being fed. They are being provided with risk provision. فَرِحِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. They are rejoicing. They are enjoying, celebrating what God has bestowed upon them. وَيَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ. And they are receiving the good news about those who have not joined them as yet, who are behind them in the world. Allah khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. That in their case too, they will have no fear of the future and no grief, sorrows of the past. In other words, they are hugely successful. Here, the hypocrites are trying to create this false impression, a gloomy picture that, the Muslims have chosen to be led by somebody who's causing them to be destroyed. And here the Quran is saying that, look here, what are you talking about? Those who've gone already, they are already successful. They have received the ultimate success, glory. And not only that, they're actually celebrating the fact that very soon they're going to be joined by their teammates, their comrades, their companions. يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. They are rejoicing, receiving good news of the favor of God, وَفَضْلٍ and His bounty. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And they are happy, delighted that God doesn't allow the reward of the reward of, pardon me, believers to be destroyed. So this has been described. And obviously, this life that has been mentioned is a life which is life after death, but before the day of judgment. The life of what we call the state of barzakh. Sometimes it described as the life in the grave. Uh, it seems from the description of the Quran and what is mentioned in Hadith in this regard has to be seen in the light of the Quran. That when messengers, Rasul, come to this world and they deliver God's message most clearly, convincingly, the people who are their immediate addressees, they have got no excuse left beyond a uh, certain time uh, to say no, because everything is so evident that you know you can't say no to what is being presented to you. It's absolutely obvious that the message is from God. After this happens, the people who still do not accept faith, they are declared as kafirs, incorrigible people who have no hope of getting the Almighty's mercy anymore because they saw the truth, they carried grudge against it, they became its enemy, and ultimately were doomed. And the opposite is true for those who believe. The believers, they after they have seen the truth, they become the embodiment of true morality, piety, and truth. And it is declared during their lifetime that they are successful. For them, they're not going to be expected to wait for until the day of judgment. It is during this lifetime that it's declared that these companions of the Prophet, and obviously most certainly the Prophet himself being the foremost, they are successful. And those who have opposed them, they are doomed. In most cases, in the stories of the messengers, it was one natural calamity or another that annihilated, destroyed the enemies, the kuffar. But in the case of the last prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it were the military might, the swords of his companions that was employed by the Almighty to cause the punishment to be inflicted upon the enemy. So it's therefore described their stories as the mini Yawmul Qiyamah, Day of Judgment. In a At a smaller scale, it's a demonstration of the Day of Judgment, how it's going to come and what it's going to entail. So when the Day of Judgment has already taken place for the people who were present at the time of the messenger of God, uh, their rewards and their punishments. Rewards for the companions, the believers, true believers, and the punishments for the enemies, the kuffar, the hypocrites. They begin immediately after they leave this world. It's not in a physical form, but nonetheless, it is a reality. That is what explains what's mentioned in the ahadith regarding the rewards of grave and the punishments of grave. So here is a description that explaining that those who were killed, they were given a treatment that was mentioned to others, and as a consequence, the propaganda of the hypocrites was silenced. Thereafter, we move on to verse 179. This verse is addressing a question. The question that came to the mind of some people, quite understandably, was that was it all needed? Would it not have been without what happened that the Almighty would have decided some people are good and therefore they deserve the paradise, and some people are bad and they deserve the hell? Why did we have to go through all these troubles? Obviously, the same question arises even now. When you're going through difficulties, pains, tragedies, tortures, disappointments, uh, it does sometimes come to your mind. Was it necessary? I mean, would it not have been otherwise? So verse 179 mentions a response. It says, "Ma kana Allahu liyazara al-mu'minina ala ma antum alayhi." God would not leave believers in the state you are in presently. Hatta hatta yamiz al-khabitha min at-tayyib, until he would have separated the evil from the good. You see, they were all together, believers and hypocrites. And how could you distinguish one from the other? God would not have allowed, particularly when the messenger was there. Why? Because in the case of the messengers, as I said, it was decided that it will be clarified before the end of the story as to who is on the right path and who is on the wrong path. So it had to be decided. It doesn't get decided otherwise in times other than the times of the messengers. Things remain muddled, confused. You have good people, you have evil people, and there isn't any clear declaration from the Almighty. But in the case of the messengers, it was not allowed to be that way. So he had to distinguish al-khabith from at-tayyib, evil from good. Now, the question, if evil and good were staying together, well, they could have been declared to get separated by announcement from the Almighty. So the answer comes from the Almighty to this question. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُطْلِعَكُمْ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ. And God is not the one who is going to inform you about the unseen world. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهِ. Instead, what happens is that God يَجْتَبِي مِنْ رُسُلِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. He chooses from his messengers whom he wills, and then asks them to deliver the message. And then there are people who get attached to him. There are others who oppose him, and a struggle ensues. And thus it is decided as to who is on the right path and who is on the wrong path, who are the good people and who are the evil people. فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. So believe in God and his messengers. That is, believe properly. وَإِن تُؤْمِنُوا وَتَتَّقُوا. And if you're going to believe properly and are going to be God conscious, فَلَكُمْ أَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ, then you will have a great reward. We move on to verse 185 then, wherein the Almighty is mentioning that, all that you're going through, is a test. Whether you are in difficulty or you are going through times of ease, they're all different manifestations of the trial that the Almighty has required for humans to go through. That's not the uh, indicator of somebody being successful or unsuccessful, what is what a person is experiencing in this life. The Quran says in verse 185, Kullu nafsin zaiqatul maut. All humans, all souls have to taste death. وَإِنَّمَا تُوَفَّوْنَ أُجُورَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And you will only be given your full true compensation on the day of judgment. فَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ فَقَدْ فَازَ. So the one who is going to be drawn away from the punishment of hell fire, وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ, is going to be given to enter the paradise. فَقَدْ فَازَ. He has succeeded. He has achieved the ultimate glory. فَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا. And as far as this life is concerned, it is nothing illa mata'ul ghurur, except that it's a it's a delusion. You know, people get fooled by the attractiveness, the glamour of this life. It's just nothing. It's a deception. So that having been clarified, we move on to the next significant part, verse 190 onwards, wherein the Almighty is responding to uh, criticism of the disbelievers. It's basically a demand that they put forth. They asked for a sign, a miracle. They said that, we belong to the children of Israel, and we've had experiences of prophets who came with amazing miracles. So if you want to prove yourself to be another prophet of God, show us your signs. Where are your signs? The Quran responds by saying, Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafil layli wan nahar la ayatil li ulil albab. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and in the alternating nature of the night and the day, there are signs for those who think, reflect, who are men of understanding. That is, if you were to look for signs for the truthfulness of this message, what is this message asking you to do? To bow down before God, the one and the only, who has created this marvelous, wonderful life. And the signs of Him being the only creator, sustainer, is, is written all across. It's only for you to look at those signs and read them. But read only those people would do who have understanding, who use their intellect. الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم. Those who remember God while standing or sitting or even lying on their sides. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And they think and ponder and worry, uh, looking at the creation of the heavens and the earth. They think deeply. And when they do so, they come to this conclusion. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. Oh Lord, you've not created all this for no reason. It's not without any purpose. Subhanallah. You are free from all weaknesses. You've got nothing wrong in you, no blemishes. How is it possible that you would ever do something that is without any objective, without any purpose. فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So please save us from the punishment of fire. That is, we realize that this amazing world that you've created, it's not possible that you've done it for no reason. I mean, how is it possible that you create this world and let people do whatever they want to, let evil prevail and cause harm to good people, and there would be good people who would not get rewarded, would go through the miseries of life and then pass away. And there are evil people who enjoy their lives in their luxuries and do everything wrong that is possible to be imagined, and hardly anything happens to them. Is it possible that this is what the Creator has created for? Is that what the purpose is? Not at all. There has to be another life. And if that's true, then it would mean that there are going to be some people who will be rewarded and there are others who are going to be punished. Oh God, please save us from punishment. Save us from the punishment of fire. So that's the response that the Almighty has given to the people who were demanding that some signs are shown. God is saying that if you were really looking for signs, that signs are there all along, all over. But your response doesn't show that you're interested in these signs. What would another amazing sign would do? It would do nothing. The same way as you are ignoring these signs, the other sign that you are demanding, even if it comes, it would have no impact on you. And the Quran elsewhere also mentions that what about those people who were actually shown the signs that you're talking about? Were they reformed because of those signs? Not at all. It's not the signs that matter. It is the attitude of the individual who is being presented with God's message. That is what matters. Towards the end of this surah, the Almighty is telling believers to be prepared because because this mission of the messenger is going to come to its climax. Now that the good people and the evil ones, they're getting separated from each other. They actually have been divided into two groups. So there is bound to be further confrontations and battles. This is written. God has decided that his punishment is going to be now inflicted upon them through you, through your military might. So, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, believers, isbiru, be patient, persevere, sabiru, and endure, warabitu, and be prepared. Be prepared mentally, physically, and materially, militarily for the battle. Fattaqullah, and fear God. Be God conscious, la'allakum tuflihun, so that you are successful. That ends Surah Al-Imran and begins, and the next two surahs are Surah Surah An-Nisaa and Surah Al-Ma'idah. Like Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran, An-Nisaa and Al-Ma'idah are also a pair, they're forming a pair. In Surah An-Nisa, what we find is that the Almighty has given the outlines of a society which the Almighty would want Muslims to create. A society where the weak, the vulnerable are taken care of. Their rights are respected and they are given what their due share is. It also talks about the, the effort, the struggle that was going on. And, it was marching towards the climax, struggle between believers and the disbelievers. The first And in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the Almighty has mentioned the covenant that God had with Muslims, and the Sharia has been given its final form. So it was the final presentation of the Almighty's Sharia. So what you find is the guidance in the Quran coming to its climax in Surah Al-Ma'idah. In the very first verse, what we find in Surah An-Nisaa is that the Almighty is saying that people who are the addressees of the Quran, they should be conscious of God's presence. They should be God conscious. Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum allazi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida. Be conscious of the presence of the one who created you from one source, one cell, one origin. فَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, and he created from that source his partner as well. وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً, and he spread across through them men and women in large number. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, and fear God, الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ, whom you ask, whose name you mention while talking to each other. وَالْأَرْحَامِ, and fear breaking relations with close relatives, those who have become your kins because of wombs. Inna Allah kana alaykum raqiba. Indeed, God is ever present and is observer of you. Uh, this verse is the beginning of Surah An-Nisa. And what we find is that the Almighty, right at the beginning, is mentioning the fact that, look here, my creation is my family. I am not going to tolerate any injustice, uh, evil behavior on the part of anyone. Be absolutely clear that I am observing everyone. These people whom you find around you, the vulnerable people, they are uh, they are my creation. So don't take them lightly. I am going to ensure that if somebody does something wrong to anyone, I'm going to take them to task. So that is setting the tone for the subsequent part of Surah An-Nisa and then Surah Al-Ma'idah to be described. And as I said, the description is telling us that God wants a good society to be created and people to be fair, to be respectful to each other. But if they do otherwise, they'll have to face it. They'll be taken to task. That's what we'll discuss uh, tomorrow, inshallah. If there is any brief question, I'm available. Right.
Assalamu
So,
alaikum, Doctor.
Walaikum assalam. Brief
Uh,
question, please.
uh,
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I have replied to someone in the chat requesting previous videos. So if you could wait just a moment before you close the video so that they can get the links to the videos so far.
Okay. So I'll wait for, let's say, a minute.
Yeah, I
That,
think
that
this is Miss Shireen K. Salamat.
okay, that's fine.
So,
Um,
sister, I have put the links for doctor's videos if you
and,
can
and and
copy
by the way,
them. Yeah,
all these presentations are going to be there in the form of clips recorded uh, very soon. Actually, it takes one day for them to appear, and I sent them to my WhatsApp groups. So inshallah, they should be there. But thank you very much for immediately responding to the demand.
you got it. Of
Okay.
course.
Assalamu alaikum
Alaikum assalam.
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.